Okay, I wonder if we could get started for this last session, if you'd like to take a seat. So we're going to start this last session with asking each of the panel members just very briefly to give their overall impressions. What are the primary points that they're thinking about making in the report? And particularly for this unenviable task that they've got to try and pull together this amount of complexity and information in a little more than 3 pages. So we're going to go through that. I have 3 public comments. If you hear anything that you would like to make a public comment after the panel have spoken, please come and fill out a blue form. There's one on the front desk here. There's others outside the door. So I'll now turn to the panel, and I don't know which way round we'll go. Shall we go in chronological order again? Sam, do you want to start?
Okay, I'll just throw these out randomly. I think first of all, this was really a fun and valuable day today. This assignment is kind of complicated, a little bit fuzzy, wicked, of course. But I think there are a couple things that come to my mind as I think about the day. It's really hard to understand. I mean, we're translating science for people who don't necessarily never worked in science, and in some ways miss the essence of it. But scientific problems are fractal. In other words, we've got a broad base of knowledge. A broad base of knowledge that we have learned, especially in the last 15 years, 20 years, about the delta. We know that. I think people often forget, and I often say that people often forget that what they consider now conventional knowledge actually came from things that we discovered 5 years ago and have been accepted by the public. So I think the scientific community has contributed tremendously to what's going on in the delta. But because they're fractal, that means every time you get this close, then you see all the other problems at the more detailed dimension. Because they're fractal, I think we're seeing the problems at maybe the 2nd or 3rd dimension. But I think we can't forget all that we've learned to this point, and that's one of the things we have to try to capture in this report, and that's not easy to do. And that's I think a tribute to the many successes that have gone on, but we also got a good picture of the complexities that remain. And I'd also ask the question, again addressing the question of the Policy Science Connect, and are we doing a bad job of it? Where have people done better? Maybe I forgot to ask that to the panels, but I'd be really interested to know if there are systems where they've solved this, done much better, and why aren't we just doing that? I think Jim said that there are no templates for this, for what we might call success. I think we also heard some strategic things that were really useful and probably on the cusp of maybe being accepted and moved on to this. What people seem to know. I mean, we heard strategic options for landscape experiments, Delta Islands in the first couple of sessions. I asked some questions about the North Delta and Suisun places as places we should focus for restoration. Those are all water supply. We heard possible strategies. Those are really all things that are very close to implementation that lie on this policy and science cusp that I think came out of today fairly clearly. And I think we got a great list of the complexities and the things that we need to know from the strategies of well, I guess the bigger picture of why things are complex. I think that's really important. 2 other things that I think personally, first of all, I think it's quite clear that from the period of 1997 to 2000, up to 2010, but things slowed down between 2002 and 2010. We had a pretty large injection of science into this system. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. That was a sign of what we need to keep things moving rapidly. That money has dried up in terms of, other than the agency's salaries, and those have even started drying up in terms of science. If we're going to really continue to this journey of trying to make progress, it's obvious that we need a big injection of science somewhere managed by the science program. Not just in the agencies for their salaries, I mean I know those need to be continued, but we need an injection of science that allows us all to work together. That's desperately needed now, or else we're just going to start flailing because we're running out of information. Secondly, I think this question, even though it's boring to most scientists, this question of performance measures, of having something that we can track, formally designated that we can track, and that raises the questions, then helps us helps the policymakers understand the questions, what has to happen next. We've got those informally, like delta smelt populations, but I think Bill Dennison, who WIM had a workshop several years ago, showed us what you can do with a really organized system of performance measures that gets the public involved and gets the policymakers involved. We can do that. We just haven't done it. A lot of people think they can do it. A lot of people have been talking about it. We kind of came up with the beginnings of a plan, but it's gone nowhere. I think this is something we really have to focus on doing right. So,
Okay, thanks, Sam. Johnny?
Okay, I also would like to thank all the presenters, first of all, because especially I've been away from the Bay Delta for quite a few years. The last thing that I was very deeply involved in was the DREAMS operation, which was very interesting, another big complex issue.
And actually, Johnny, can you talk a little more into the
Sure.
microphone? I think it's got a short
Peter,
cable
just
there
like-
for you, so you might want to just take it off the stand.
Okay,
if it's
that's
easy.
maybe a good idea. Okay, can you guys hear me back there? Okay, good, very good. One of the things that I wanted to do when I came here was to bring a little bit of an outside perspective, because I have been away from California water problems for a while, but I do read about it because it's still interesting and it's an important issue, obviously, nationally and international, because it's such a big place and you all invested such a large amount of effort and time. But one of the things that was a little surprising to me, it's very deja vu, right? I mean, the problems are essentially the same problems that it was when I came here in 2004. It's the same people doing the same great science, some additional faces, which is wonderful. But I think the thing that is really different when I look at what goes on in California is the kind of integrated effort across agencies and NGOs and everyone working together to get groups like this together that more or less speak the same language and tell more or less the same story with slightly different emphases and importances from their standpoint. That's a very unusual thing, and I think maybe people who work in California don't really appreciate how unique your approach on working on these complex systems and applying science to making decisions about those systems is. But it's very unique. And a couple of things that I've taken away about this from your presentations is we kind of started out this concept of writing this review paper, which seemed like a really great idea until I realized how much information there is, how diverse the ideas and concepts are, and that we have to cram that into 20 pages, and you just, no matter what the reality, you think, okay, what's my 5 pages going to say? And so I'm looking at that challenge, and it is a challenge, but I think it's going to be fun, and we all hope that it will be useful. But we started this project kind of with this concept that the Bay Delta system is more complex, and we really can't figure it out. And so this is really the issue, that there's this level of science misunderstanding that we have to deal with, and that we have to convince people wherever with our cogent summary about this. But, I mean, I wasn't totally convinced of that when we started, but I'm less convinced now. I think it is a complex system, but it's very clear that in the 10 years I've been away, you all have been working diligently, and you have a much, much deeper understanding, and there's a much broader acceptance of what you do know and what you don't know. And I think we hopefully can put that all together, and in a way that will help people outside of this system, because I think that's really the important aspect of this. The people outside the system understand what needs to happen in California and why it's important to invest in that, because it is. And I think that there are 2 really big issues. I mean, there are millions of them after listening to all this and reading myriad reports now. But one thing that came off today that we talked about a little bit, but we didn't really delve into much, that seems to be a really underlying complexity of the system that is different than others. And that is how restoration and management trades off amongst all of the various stockholders, or stakeholders, sorry, not stockholders. Yeah, we haven't gotten that far in California yet. We do that in Montana, though. But how that trades off. And so working in these systems, restoring them, managing them, has implications. One action here causes other actions there. And I'm familiar with those in really simple systems, like you mess around in Colorado and you affect invasive species that are also endangered or invasive in the sense they came to that system from somewhere else. And so to me, that is a complexity that's a challenge. And it's unique and it's different. The other one, which is not a science thing, so I'm not sure how we'll deal with it, and maybe we won't, but the other complexity is any decision that you make to do anything, to have an experiment, we talked a lot about experiments, has to go through an incredible number of entities, agencies, individuals, NGOs. This is a unique system. Most of the other places I've worked in, there are just a handful of people that are really involved in making decisions about pretty big issues to those folks. And so that's a unique situation. And it's a very big challenge of how do you bring the level of understanding up to the point where you can convince 195 people in a room instead of 6. This is a big challenge, I think. And so I think that was really reiterated to me today in all your presentations, which were all great and very knowledgeable and done quickly. And so I want to thank you again for that.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. And maybe we'll let Cliff go last if we're going chronological order. Mike, would you like to give your closing thoughts?
Well, like Johnny, I want to thank the presenters because they did a wonderful job and it was a fascinating day. I'm going to be brief because I confess I'm still rather confused about exactly how we're going to tackle this particular project. Maybe I'll quote my favorite Yogi Berra saying, when you don't know where you're going, you've got to be careful because you might not get there. So it's difficult to say right now where we're going to end up. Few things that, I heard lots of new things today, but a few that sort of came through to me was some of the things Jim Klearn said, in particular his comment that the Delta is a continually evolving system and we're never going to be able to fully pin it down. And several people have talked about wicked problems, and wicked problems have a kind of formal definition in planning and management. And one of the characteristics of wicked problems is that they can't be solved, they can only be managed. And I think I will say that's probably what we're looking at, is coming up with a system of management that will be hopefully relatively effective, rather than imagining we can clearly define this problem and ultimately provide a solution. I'm kind of reminded of 4 key questions that seem to have characterized most of these large-scale environmental issues that I've had any involvement with. The first thing is we need to know, what do we have? Well, we've got lots of science behind us that tells us something about what we have, and also now something about what we've had in the past. As Peter Moyle said, we also need to be able to answer the question, what do we want this system to be like sometime in the future? And I don't think we've really come to grips with that question very well yet. Once you've answered that question, you need to then concern yourself with what's actually feasible, because most of us want something that's pie in the sky that we're really not going to be able to get. So we need to be able to make a reality check and decide what among the things we would like to have we can actually accomplish. And then the final question is, well, how do we get to where we want to go from where we are now? And I think we still have a lot of work to do on those latter 3 questions. So we're not anywhere near coming up with the final management plan for this problem as yet, I don't think. But I hope that whatever we can come up with will make some kind of a contribution to making progress down the road towards that happy place. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Last but not least, Cliff, your thoughts.
Okay, well, I too will try to make this fairly brief. You've heard some, I think, good insights from the other three presenters. When I was asked to take on this task by Peter and by the Delta Science program, I actually was very eager to do that for two reasons. And the two reasons were I really wanted to re-engage with the scientific community working in the Bay and the Delta. It's a dynamic, diverse, interdisciplinary group of people, and being away from it just for a few years, I know I have sort of lost a lot of the understanding of what's at the cutting edge and what's topical, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to come back and listen today. I also wanted to have the opportunity to work with these other three individuals that I'm sitting next to. We've never done this before. We've never brought back the lead scientists for any concerted, I think, integrated effort. I don't know how it's going to work, and I'm still really scared as to how well it's going to work because it's a very difficult and very challenging task we've been asked to do. A couple things that I've experienced in my own career where we've tried to do something like this is when we've been asked, for example, to take on a major problem by, for example, Ecological Society of America has embarked on a series of papers that basically are what are the key topics in ecology that the public needs to know more about. And I was involved in writing two of those, one back in the late 90s and one in the early 2000s. And the second one I was involved in was water in a changing world. Well, that was a pretty major theme of what we heard today is how do you deal with water in a rapidly changing world, changing because of human pressures, changing because of climate. And so coming up with a concise, readable, influential document of 10, 15, 20 pages of length is what we've been charged with doing. We're going to spend probably tonight and all day tomorrow trying to hammer out some of the good ideas that we heard and some of the structure that we might use to try to generate this document. But it, to me, is not, there's still a lack of clarity as to where we're going to head, and hopefully the next 24 hours will improve that. The one thing I do want to say is I really think that there is an opportunity here for some boldness, and I hope that we as a foursome will be a bit bold. And I really do hope that we basically embrace ideas that we can agree upon and present them to you as things that would basically be the next steps moving forward, or at least our ideas of what those might be. Because I think it's we need to move beyond just simply continuing to monitor this system. We really need to begin to actually implement some projects, some experiments, and really move that next step down the road to actually beginning to deal with some of the changes that are being imposed on the system and seeing if we can come up with a better and more beneficial ending with some of our attempts. And I know it's fraught with lots of difficulty, and we're going to make lots of mistakes, but I think we need to be bold and move forward. And hopefully we can give you some ideas where we think that might be best done.
Okay, well, thank you, Cliff. We're now going to go to public comment, and I would ask that folks try and restrict their comments to 2 minutes or less. And we'll start with Joseph Ritzy, if I pronounced that correctly. And Joseph, if you want to pick a mic, stand at the front if you feel more comfortable, or just grab a seat.
Well, maybe I should settle over here. Okay. I don't want to lean over too much. I'm here to present a solution. I've heard a lot of other problems. This is all about a solution. It's called natural desalination. I had a slide, but they won't show it, but I do have flyers as well as a video giving you a more complete description of exactly what's going on. Most of the time when I say natural desalination, people think of desalination. This is not regular desalination, because this is actually can generate as much water as California wants. Remember that, wants, not needs. And it's using zero power to do it. Why? Because you're putting it down a half mile under the ocean and using the osmotic pressures of the ocean to desalinate the water. It has been tried and it has been proven to be effective off the coast of Italy. All of these processes have been proven and are 100% proven and work. After you've got the water, the regular water out, you're not taking out any of the creatures or any of the life. Because it's located at 1,800 feet down, all of your life, or 90% of your life in the ocean, resides in the sun zone, which is the first 660 feet down. This is at 1,800 feet. So you avoid all of the microbes and other things that are going to be living on it. That is your number one problem with desalination, is because the reverse osmosis has life that starts growing on it. And then what they have is the number two problem is then they have to use chlorine in order to kill all of those bacteria, and it also harms the reverse osmosis. So you eliminate the two biggest problems of being able to keep your desalination field alive and working all the time. I'm also using the older technology, which is the nano hair-like fibers instead of the spiral round, because it offers 10 times the surface area. And by having that, it allows you to bring in more water. Having it offshore allows you to have it as your desalination field as big as you want. I'm talking about millions of acre feet, replacing all of your water that's coming out of the Delta today for the state and federal water projects. You have an ideal location right at Monterey Bay. If you, instead of making your twin tunnels, what they're having right now is 70 miles worth of 40-foot tunnels. If you did a tunnel from the aqueducts to Monterey Bay, that's only 66 miles. That's less, and it would be a much better choice.
And actually, Joseph, I really appreciate that. I think the point you're making is reduced reliance on the Delta. The purpose of this panel actually is not to be looking in the future at solutions.
This panel is also supposed to be looking at the coexistence of those two functions. By adding more water to the inland valley and taking away the water, you're going to have more water flush coming from the San Joaquin. The more water you get coming through, the better life you're going to have in the Delta.
Oh, yeah. No.
Am I right?
No, the reduced reliance on the Delta is a big issue, and I think you've got both a handout there and a CD.
I do.
And so if you could perhaps just wrap up and then leave it here for
I'm
folks.
hoping you guys will start looking at something new. I'm an innovator, and I'd like you to try to prove me wrong if you wish, but all of this has been proven. Look at it. Try to solve California's problems. Let's increase our jobs, add more crops. Everything can be better. But you have to listen. You have to think and open your minds to something new and the possibilities that are actually there.
Okay. Thank you, Joseph. The next request is Dr. Lisa Thompson from Regional Sanitation District. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, sounds my volume. There we go. Great. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for sticking with us all this long. My name is Lisa Thompson. I'm representing Regional SAN, or the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District. I've been the chief scientist at Regional SAN for about a year now. And I just wanted to encourage the panel, when you're putting a report together, I really think the community, and some of you have said this, the community is really close to really making a breakthrough on how we approach things in the Delta. There's a lot more emphasis on collaborative work. I think the Delta Stewardship Program, Delta Stewardship Council, the Delta Science Program have really been encouraging us on that, and I'm really becoming more of a believer in that. I'd like to just mention a couple of things that Regional SAN has been involved with as an example of how we've been collaborating on science and policy and management, just to kind of give you an idea it's all possible. Anka Miller-Solger mentioned the project on the Sacramento River where we had with and without wastewater parcels. Regional SAN put up a big chunk of the money for that project. I was really glad that Anka mentioned it because it was one of the few real adaptive management experiments that I've seen done on the river. And I also wanted to, that was our ratepayers that paid for that. I wanted to mention that. And also want to mention that it was our treatment staff, the operators at the plant who figured out how to do a 20-hour diversion so we could get that going. It was hairy times in the control room when they were doing that, but they really put in a big effort to get that done. We've also been doing some of our own research. Some mention about clam grazing, invasive clams came up, and Tim Musson, who works with me, has put together a study working along with people from the USGS and other organizations to look at what clam grazing might be like higher up in the river than people have looked in the past, so upstream of the treatment plant, just to kind of fill that area in, get a better idea of how the system works. And finally, I wanted to say that a large number of regional SAND staff are active participants in a number of workshops in the Delta. We're involved with the Delta Regional Monitoring Program that's being developed, the Delta Nutrient Research Plan that the Regional Water Board is putting together, and also the San Francisco Bay Nutrient Management Strategy. And we really would like to support future efforts towards getting more funding for science in the Delta, and we'd really encourage that be done in this collaborative fashion that seems to be coming around. I think that ongoing collaboration is really important for really keeping the science and the policy and the management in sync with one another. And lastly, I'd like to thank the panelists and everybody who spoke today just for your dedication to the Delta. It's a long slog, but I think we're making progress. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thompson. And the last blue slip I have here is from Professor Ahmed Abrijam-Chi, who's currently a visiting professor at UC Davis, and his permanent position is with the Sharif University of Technology in Tehran, one of the top universities. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I really enjoyed today's lectures and discussions. And I was just wondering if the dams and reservoirs which have done water regulation and flood control have adverse effect on the integrity of the delta and ecosystem, because I know that so many dams in California have been built in the last maybe 100 years. But in my home country, we are still making dams, and it is a very controversial subject. And besides that question, I was wondering if in the future that these dams are their useful life ends, are we going to build some new dams or not? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Well, that concludes. Maggie, no other blue slips? Nope, great. So I'd like to just ask, while we have Letty Beelan here, if you would like to make a few final remarks, either here or...
Thanks, Peter, and thank you for everybody coming today. I'll just stand up here. As speaking for the Interior Department, one of the agencies, the federal agencies that asked for to convene this panel and look at these issues, I think it's been an extraordinary day. I bet you there's not a single person in this room who hasn't learned something significant. I'm still amazed that we got this incredibly talented and experienced panel to accept what I acknowledge is a ridiculous charge. As I said to you earlier, you know, if I had this assignment, I would first turn it back to the teacher and say, this is impossible. You cannot summarize this stuff in 15 to 20 pages. And then I'd say, what size can the font be? Can it be, you know, like 0.333? But anyway, and I note it's particularly fun to hear you all hear your reactions and use words like fun, eager, bold, fascinating. It's really, it's just, I'm so excited. I think very excited about this day and the amazing expertise that came through this room today, and that you guys represent there, and to take all of this expertise and wisdom and to try to use it to educate 230 agencies and many members of the public and decision makers. I can't tell you how important I think this is, and I know you guys think that because you accepted this challenge, and I think it's going to be incredibly helpful because policy making in such a complex scientific environment, we need guideposts, and people, you all who have both the scientific expertise and the wisdom gained through that, we really are fortunate to be able to get your expertise. So thank you guys so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Letty, for those remarks. And I'd just like to echo on behalf of the Natural Resources Agency and the Stewardship Council how much we appreciate all of the presenters today. Many of them came the length of the state to be here. And also, of course, the panelists to take on Mission Impossible, and you should have destroyed that tape after all. So we look forward to your upcoming report. And just as a reminder for the folks here in the audience, according to the guidelines of the science program, please do not contact the panel members directly. If you have materials that you would like them to consider, please forward that to Maggie Chrisman or just into the science program in general, just so that the panel's not overwhelmed. And they are instructed just to ignore anything that comes to them directly. So once again, travel safely home. I hope everyone got as much out of it as we did in the science program. So thanks a lot.